a Viking professional oven that is not heating up correctly, it's not igniting or not cooking evenly. So this one is an example of one that is working. When you set it for heat, you should be able to look down underneath the oven door and see two flames, two igniters that fire up in about 60 seconds, and then two nice blue flames. So that would be an oven that's working correctly. And with this oven, we noticed that wasn't working quite right. Here's an example of an igniter that is working. As soon as you get call for heat, it starts to glow bright. Here's the one on the left, is an old one that is not working and it just doesn't quite fire up. The one on the right ignites with gas burning. The one on the left took another 20 minutes before it ignited. So that's the case. It's important to replace it with an igniter. Here's a generic igniter that works for this model and is also pretty cheap. You can get it on Amazon. We'll make sure we unplug it or turn off the power at the breaker box. And then we're just going to pull the door straight off. We pull it off at about 45 degrees and then lift up and the door comes out. We're going to remove this bottom panel by removing two Phillips head screws, one on the left, one on the right, so we can get to the wires that hook up to the igniter. So on this model there's two igniters, and if you have uneven baking, it could be that one of them is not working correctly. And if nothing lights up, then you have to replace both of them. So we're going to take out these racks, I'm going to lift this up and then pull it out at the top. Probably wisest to replace both igniters while you're in there because it takes a little bit of time to get to where you can replace the igniter, so it's good just to do them both at the same time. We're going to pull up on the one on the right and then pull it out at the top. And now we'll be able to lift the bottom panel off with the heat deflector. Kind of heavy, so take your time. Pull that off, and then you'll have good access to get to both igniters. So we're pulling the bottom panel out of the way, and there's the igniter on the left and the igniter on the right, and they're just held in by some Phillips head screws. And we're just going to put a little bit of lubricant on the threads. You can use any kind of oil. This stuff works pretty good though. But any kind of like 3-in-1 oil, mineral oil would work. Just put a little bit on each one of the threads. And then we're going to be removing the igniter on the right first. We just have to undo the wires for that igniter and then just spin out those two Phillips head screws. The one on the left's a little bit harder to get to. Takes a little bit more steps, but this one's pretty easy. So we got the screws out, can lift it up, and we just have to remove these two wires that hold it in place, or that give it power. Then we can just pull the whole thing out. And then all we need to do is just cut the wires from the old one and splice them onto the new igniter. The new igniter doesn't come with modular wire connectors, they're just regular wires. So we're going to use the old wire from the old igniter. We're going to cut it off, and then we use these ceramic wire nuts to connect it. Now we're going to pull the wires through the firewall, and once we get them through, then we can just put those Phillips head screws back in on that igniter. Make sure you get the wires all the way through, because you don't really want any wire in that oven cavity where it gets super hot. Any excess wire. So we got that in position. We're just going to thread those Phillips head screws back in. And then we'll tighten them down, and then we'll reconnect the two wires that bring power to the igniter. It's really good to do these one at a time so you don't get the wires mixed up. So just one igniter replace it and then do the other igniter. So we got the wires hooked back up, we turn it on, and then within a few seconds you should get the glow, should get brighter and brighter, and eventually almost white hot, and then you should get ignition. The one on the left is still the old one, so we can see it's kind of anemic, not doing much, and that's why you get this kind of uneven heating of the oven. So there's the one on the right working good. So now we're going to replace the one on the left, but to do it we're going to remove the burner tube. We have to remove a couple of screws here. They're just Phillips head screws. So we'll just spin those out, and that's going to loosen a bracket that holds in the burner tube or venturi. There's a few more screws on the other side of the burner tube that we'll also remove. And then the bracket just comes right off. Just pull it towards you. Comes off that pin. And we got those two loosened, so just going to remove those screws. And then we just undid the venturi burner tube from its seat, and we're going to pull the whole thing out. We've got to make sure we undo a couple wires that are holding on the igniter. You got this one over here at the safety valve. Just wiggle that one off. And then we have one that connects to a red wire. Could undo that one. And then you can pull the whole assembly out. So we'll remove the screws that hold on the old igniter. And we can separate that from the burner tube. And we're going to get the new igniter. Here's the new and the old one together. We're going to cut the wires from the old one and then splice them onto the new igniter, just like we did on the first igniter. So just cut those. We'll splice about 1/4 inch of the insulation off, and we use our little ceramic wire nuts to hook them together. There's the two old ones. So we wrap the wires together and then put on the ceramic wire nut as tight as possible. We do that for each side. And now we hooked the igniter back onto the burner tube. And we're going to feed the burner tube back through the firewall. We'll also pull the wires back through. And then we'll put the tube through. We'll get it seated back onto where the gas comes in. I can just remove some of the dirt that got in there. Put that back on, and we just got to hook up the Phillips head screws that hold the tube in place, and then hook up the wires, and then we can take it for a test. So now we have the bracket in the back in position. We're going to just put those screws back in, two Phillips head screws. It is possible to change the igniter without removing this left burner tube, but it's just hard to get to one of the screws, so this probably is an easier way to do it. So tighten those down. And then we have that little bracket in the front that we have to put back on. So there's a kind of a big part and a little part. The little part goes against the firewall, and the big part goes over that little pin on the venturi tube. Put those two screws in to hold it in position. And then we just have to put the two wires back on. One goes to the red wire and one goes to the safety valve. So we got that one. This is the one on the safety valve. And then we're going to hook up that red wire for power. We're just going to tuck away the wires, just kind of get them out of the way. Try and be careful that no wires are sticking into the area where the oven is. And we're going to test it out now. We set it for 350, and then just within a few seconds we see both igniters glowing at the same time, and then we'll see them ignite at about the same time. So now you have a nice even heating, and the bake work really well. This lasts maybe another 7 to 8 years. It's a nice flame. And you're all set. Next thing is just to put it back together. So get the thumbs up. So we put the bottom plate back on. I have to lift it up in the back a little bit to be able to seat it all the way in where I want it. There we go. And I'm going to put the grates back in. So I push them in at the top and then set it down. This is the one on the left. This bottom plate was a little warped, probably got warped during the self-cleaning cycle, so I have to kind of push down hard to get it to be flat, but that's okay. That's pretty common. Put the one in on the right, push it in, and we'll put in that bottom plate, the toe kick panel. Just hinge it back up, and then we have 2 Phillips head screws we're going to put back in. Tighten those up. Put the grates back in. And we want to slide the door back on, but we want to get the little hinge things to be out where it makes it easier to slide on. So I'm going to pull it toward me and then push this little lever down to hold it. You can do it at this 30 degrees, or you can go down to 45 degrees, whatever is easier for you. Either one works. Do the same on the right side. And then I'm going to put the door against my knee and just feed it onto those hinges. And we're going to push it down and kind of wiggle it and push it at the same time, and it should seat itself down. You may have to move those little levers. So the oven door's moving really good. It's closing correctly. We'll set our temperature, and then again we can see at the bottom of the door we can see 2 good flames, so we know that it's back working great again. And this is a great oven that'll last for many years. Just these igniters go out now and then, and pretty easy to replace. So this is on the Viking Professional. So thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe to our channel when you get a chance.